Well, new information about the assassination of President John F. Kennedy is being made public for the very first time. The National Archives has released thousands of previously classified documents. They describe decades of spying and surveillance, assassination plots, and tension among U.S. intelligence agencies. Some of the files are still being withheld, but President Trump tweeted Friday night that he will allow the release of everything. That doesn't include the names and addresses of living people. Larry Sabato is director of the University of Virginia Center for Politics and author of the Kennedy Half Century. He joins us now. Okay, Larry, we've been dying to know. We've got a chance to go through these. What are the big revelations?
Well, let me caution first, even with a lot of help, some wonderful student help here, we've only been able to get through about 1/8 of the tremendous number of pages and documents and files and memos. So there will be continuing revelations and many more nuggets to come. But I've been struck by a number of things. Some support the idea that Oswald was the lone shooter, others do not. What supports it that I've been able to piece together, I had not realized before I read one of these new documents that Lee Harvey Oswald in the mid-1950s, during President Eisenhower's second term, had threatened President Eisenhower's life. This was not reported to authorities. It was by an acquaintance of his in the military. He said it to that acquaintance and indicated he wanted to see Eisenhower die, and he'd like to be the one to do it because he was an oppressor of poor people. When you look at Oswald's life, you see that there is this strain of violence. He has violent tendencies and expressed them well before November 22nd with other violent activities and threats. So that was interesting to me. Something else that I've always focused on, and many people who've looked at the assassination have, is whether Lee Harvey Oswald and Jack Ruby, who of course was the one who killed Lee Harvey Oswald just 2 days after the assassination, did they ever meet? Did they ever know each other? There are so many rumors and tips and calls to police and the FBI in the aftermath of the assassination. They were checked out. I don't know whether all of them were checked out, but there are a goodly number in these particular files. To the best of the police's knowledge and the best of the FBI's knowledge, they did not know each other, and they could never find a circumstance where they could prove they were in the same room in Dallas at the same time. Those are two things. There are many, many more nuggets that we've been picking up.
It's just so fascinating, Larry, after all these years to get these new details. There's also information about an anonymous tips before the assassination. What are you reading about that?
This one stunned me, and I first learned about it from the British media. The media, both electronic and print, yesterday in Britain, was really obsessed with this one memo that indicated that 25 minutes before President Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas at 12:30 p.m. Dallas time, November 22nd, a reporter at the Cambridge News in Cambridge, England, the home of the great Cambridge University, received a telephone call. An anonymous tipster said, almost exactly quoting, "You'd better call the U.S. Embassy. There's big news coming out of the United States." Well, of course, the reporter did nothing of the kind until he heard about the assassination. Apparently, he was shaken. MI5, British intelligence, was called in to examine it. They're the ones who fixed the time at 12:05, and they believe the reporter. The reporter was a very responsible individual who wasn't inclined to make things up. There was not fake news in that reporter's agenda. Well, if that person knew, then there has to be a conspiracy, or somebody had to at least know that Oswald was going to do this in advance. Was it a coincidence? Maybe. But that's one of the great coincidences in world history.
When you talk also about foreign affairs and the influence abroad, Fidel Castro, for decades there were rumors that the CIA plotted to assassinate him. What do we know about that? Anything more?
Most of the memos are retreads. That is, we've known for a long time that the CIA and indeed the White House came up with all kinds of ideas to bump Castro off, including a poisoned wetsuit when he went diving, just all kinds of strange things. But I'll tell you one that I had never come across before, and I've checked with others, they'd never heard of it either. This was at the highest levels of the White House, the highest level of aides to President Kennedy. A long memo discussing the idea of having a biological agent injected into insects, dropping them over the crops in Cuba, every place where there was a major crop field, so that the biological agent could destroy the crops. And because people probably would be starving, or at least some people would, it would supposedly spark a popular revolt and overthrow Fidel Castro. Wow. That was chilling. Now, I've had enough time to check. No one thinks that they actually carried out this plot, but they were talking about it in some detail. So quite a bit of thought went into it.
It's almost like, Larry, if this was a Hollywood movie, you wouldn't believe that that actually happened or was a potential intelligence effort, maybe.
Exactly.
I want to ask you, though, there's a recent poll. It says 61% of Americans still believe that Lee Harvey Oswald did not act alone. Do we have anything more about those conspiracy theories?
There are a few things that we found, and we're hoping to find a great deal more in the documents that have been withheld, that the president says are coming out by April 26th. Of course, under law, they were supposed to come out by October 26th. But we found a few things. There is some credible testimony that someone accompanied Lee Harvey Oswald on the bus from the United States to Mexico City 7 weeks before the assassination in September 1963. Well, I doubt he would bring a fishing buddy with him. This was 6 days devoted to Oswald trying to get a visa into Cuba and trying to get the Soviet Union to help him do so. He visited both embassies. There are credible reports, even one that J. Edgar Hoover passed along to the Warren Commission, that Oswald openly expressed his desire to kill President Kennedy and his determination to do so, partly because he was angry he wasn't getting the visa. Now, again, did they believe him? Probably not. Oswald was a misfit. He was a sociopath. He would lose complete control at moments. So maybe they just dismissed it as the rantings of a madman. But still, that's an important opening to the Mexico City explanation, which has not been really undertaken, I think, in all of these years since the assassination. And the Warren Commission didn't do much investigation of Mexico City because they were afraid, and the President Lyndon Johnson, was afraid that it would reveal something about the Soviet Union or the Cubans being involved in the Kennedy assassination, which would potentially have led to nuclear war.
Larry, you know, the CIA decided to hold back some of the documents, and President Trump has said he wants everything to be released. What do you think are in those documents that were held? Is there a way of gauging what might be in them?
Well, I think some of the subjects we've just been discussing are probably in those papers. But one thing that I think inevitably is in there is reevaluations by both the CIA and the FBI, not just in the 60s, but in succeeding decades, about the mistakes they made. How did they drop the ball with respect to Lee Harvey Oswald? This was not someone who melted into the crowd. He was a very strange individual, one of just a handful of Americans to defect to the Soviet Union, when I don't think many people would have wanted to leave America for that. And then he returned to the United States, and before long he's out campaigning on the public streets for Fidel Castro. Very strange. And both the CIA and the FBI knew about him. Both of them were keeping tabs on him, and both of them dropped the ball. They never told the Secret Service he even existed. Secret Service had no idea he was in Dallas on November 22nd, much less working in a building just next to the motorcade route where the president is coming by in an open limousine. It's hard to believe, but it's true.
It's just so fascinating, Larry, all these details and this new information, but also the fact that you said you're only 1/8 through all the documents. So we'll be hearing about much more, I'm sure, from everyone else as well as you. Larry Sabato, thank you so much for joining us, Larry.
Enjoyed it very much. Thank you.